we were surrounded by helicopters with lights on, and there was riot shields with us, banging the shields and making a noise. As we came out of the club, they closed it down immediately. And yeah, it was like Bleasdale, you know what I mean? It was like, I've never seen such over... In fact, they're coming back from it. And it was just a complete overreaction. And to be honest, at that moment, I just thought, no, it's over, it's finished. I know it went on for a few years, but I didn't.
Despite failing fortunes, Factory's New Saviour's Happy Mondays were sent to sunny Barbados in 1992 to write and record their fourth album. The company desperately needed another successful release. There was no heroin on the island to feed Sean's habit. All he needed to get writing was a generous supply of methadone. He packed it, but dropped and smashed it at Manchester Airport.
We go and see Keith Richards' doctor in Barbados, Dr. Brown, but he hasn't got any methadone because there's no heroin on the island, which is why he went in the first place. And the local guy selling shells at the beach, his cousin's the chief of police, so he's got like an endless supply of crack cocaine.
There's no smack on Barbados. Barbados, good idea. The fact I hadn't researched it and found out it was crack central was a mistake. I admit that completely.
The Mondays had the run of Eddie Grant's secluded and expensive recording studio in Barbados. They turned it into Crack Central.
It was great. It was on an old plantation house and there was a swimming pool, and someone said to me, "Go and have a look at the swimming pool." And I went up and they'd made out, the sun lounges. They made a crack den out of sun lounges.
Bears had turned over like the Jeep and broken his arm in 3 places,
You travel across to restaurants and stuff and you see cars on the side of the road upside down. And then Bez's Jeep was because he'd gone into this swampland. You could see from the pool, there's a Jeep upside down. It's probably still there to this day. But the roads are terrible. The roads are terrible, the roads are terrible, that's what it was, But it was pretty, but he was good, he wasn't as... No, it was pretty bad.
I was in LA having nightly phone calls to Nathan about the fact that they've crashed another hire car, that Bez's arm is now in plaster, that Sean hasn't written any lyrics.
What's going on, man?
I'm saying, right, okay, I tell you, Nathan, I'm gonna come down on the way home to Manchester, thinking that Los Angeles, Barbados, Manchester. Barbados is in fucking Venezuela. The West Indies sounds like the West Indies. The Caribbean, so I couldn't go. So I missed it. It's my one regret in life. I would have done nothing to help whatsoever. I just would have liked to have seen it.
Tony loved that madness. But like I say, it's great if you're watching it and you're a posh boy and you're like, wow, it's so punk and fantastic. He was so obsessed with Sean, he really was.
Sean was caught at 1 in the morning with the fire doors open to Eddie Grant's studio, taking the studio sofas, number 1 and 2, and pushing them into a van to take down to town to sell for crack. I just think it's wonderful.
There was gifts, there was gifts to the dealers. There's a nice... when you're living in a crack house, which is just a wooden hut, and, and a camping stove to cook up your crack, they didn't have chairs. So it was like, there's loads of chairs in the studio. There's a chair for you, mate, and taken to the crack house. It was more of a gift.
Only 2 years before, Wilson had sent New Order to Ibiza to record their album, Technique.
Tony came to see us and he listened and he said, "This is the most expensive holiday you've ever had." And it was. We came back with nothing, apart from a great tan and ecstasy poison.
They let us do that, and then to keep the Mondays out of trouble, they sent them to Barbados, to another island in the sun.
I used to argue with Sean all the time, and Paul and Nathan, because I thought they were a bunch of bastards, and they were around us, and I didn't like it, the way they acted. And they caused a lot of problems, really, but it was part of their image. That was their image, and you couldn't... That's what it was sold on,
But I think also the Barbados wasn't just the drug problem.
No, we're not doing fucking Stonehenge.
the group had been Sean's group, Sean's gang. Right, no, go on, Moose, do that. Right, okay, Gaz, do that. And everyone had done what Sean told them.
It's a meal. It's going to be a secret sauce. I can't tell you that your fucking bass is too loud. That's all. Your bass was a little bit too loud, sweet.
And then suddenly they broke. They broke and they were massive and they were playing to 10,000 people. They're now a big group. And they get there and the boss of the group goes, do that. And they go, no, I'm the drummer in the Mondays. I'm the bass player. I'll do what I fucking want. And to some degree, I think Sean lost control of his gang.
And Factory had lost control of what it needed the most, a successful album to release.
I had Sean, marked down to go into rehab kind of within 48 hours of getting back to England from Barbados. And the guy, the clinic who ran the clinic just said, well, you can't stick him on a plane because if he's been doing 30 rocks a day for 6 weeks, he's going to have a heart attack because of the air pressure. And I was like, well, what he suggested was we'll fly a private medical team out there, put him on monitors and everything else, and high maintenance. And I said, how much is that going to cost? He went, 25,000 quid. I went, he can have the fucking heart attack.
Hot on the Monday's return to Britain was the arrival of grunge. The music press turned its attention from Manchester to Seattle, from the Happy Mondays to Nirvana. When the Barbados album Yes Please was eventually released in 1992, the critical response was no thank you. From the height of their popularity in 1989, the Happy Mondays now found themselves out in the cold. With New Order at each other's throats over money and the Hacienda, their new Factory album Republic was delayed. The company had nothing big to sell.
Why Young Factory?
No one else wants us.
They had no acts. A record label, I don't care who they are, if they've got no acts, they're going to go under.
Wilson's Factory was collapsing. Financially, he had less to lose than his partners. His face was still all over regional TV.
Good evening. Welcome to the State of the Region. The people of Britain actually regard the poll tax as more important to them than your constitutional issue.
I've got an upper middle class day job. I'm a TV presenter. What am I going to fucking do in my life? The person who should have been pissed off was Alan. Because Alan was an out-of-work actor. He should have been worried about making money, but he wasn't.
Factory had invested in property, lavish new offices, and the Hacienda. They now needed bank loans, mortgages, and outside investors. People who weren't part of the core group. People who didn't care about the social experiment. People who wouldn't wait to get paid.
Personally speaking, I think Tony got carried away. The offices were too much. And if you're going to do that, build massive offices and have this empire, then you have to be serious about what you're doing.
Factory only went wrong when it came into contact with the real world. We lived in this Shangri-La of creativity, and at a certain point at the time they had to come down from Shangri-La and go to the bank, and when that happened, that's when it went tits up.
It had survived on other forms of investment, in a way the kind of investment, the investment of belief, and fundamentally the investment of life and lives, with Ian making perhaps, the most profound investment in the future of Factory.
Savile once said to me, Tony, you think you ran a business. Can you think of any decision you or Alan or Rob ever took to make a profit? And obviously, after about a few seconds, I realised I could never in a million light years think of anything we ever did to make a profit. In fact, we survived so many times through so much shit that we got used to being survivors. So when we finally went bankrupt, it was a bit of a, this wasn't meant to happen. I always thought we'd survive everything, but in the end you can't survive everything, not your own stupidity.
Factory went into receivership on the 23rd of November 1992. The hacienda closed 5 years later. It was torn down and rebuilt as a luxury apartment block. Ironically, it retains the same name, a capitalist hijack of Factory's utopian dream. But in the end, it was the dream itself that mattered.
It changed the city. I think you could trace back the whole redevelopment of Manchester to the hacienda, to Factory Records. The whole idea, let's make something of the city that's, that we live in, gave the city a confidence that it had a really hip kind of pop culture in it. It wasn't just football, it was like music as well. And the idea of having this kind of great big kind of steel and crow building in centre of Manchester Club, it's like every flat looks like that now. The whole city has become the hacienda. Ironically, the hacienda's gone, and the whole rest of it is full of them. It's like it's spread all over the place.
The history of rock and roll is the history of small cities, be it Seattle, be it San Francisco, be it Liverpool. And these cities have 3 years in the sun. And then the clouds come over again, it's like it never happened. But Manchester, from the Pistols in June '76, right the way through to whenever Oasis took too many drugs to actually make sense, for nearly 20 years, Manchester was the music city in the world.
It's almost like some weird willpower that maybe Wilson's got that creates, ultimately, a kind of story that makes sense of all the weird coincidences and mistakes and follies, that they, foolish thoughts that they were having. But foolish thoughts always based within manifestos, and oddly enough, the manifestos they were having about why they wanted to open a nightclub, changing the landscape of Manchester, making it a more modern city where economic forces and avant-garde forces would gravitate towards because it was so interesting. Oddly enough, all of that happened. That's the horrible thought, and yet also in the end the splendid thought. At the end of it all, it was some weird atmosphere that Wilson created out of the turmoil of his own ego and his love for the city and his love for the North, and that we've all fallen in line even when we thought we were actually doing the opposite. Somehow we were still working for his ulterior motive.
It did feel like it was more than just a record label. And one of the reasons was that very early on someone died. I think that makes everyone feel different about what you are doing. It made me, and I think it made us all feel different. I think Ian's passage in the early days meant that things never got dull, things never got boring. It was always as if there really was something creative being done. That contract which said the musicians own everything, we own nothing, in a way forestalled us from ever making money, which meant that we were never valuable. Fuck it. All that was valuable was the history we made, not the money we made.
Up next on BBC4, country and folk music from both sides of the pond combine in Transatlantic Sessions.